Can you hear us? Yes? While we're settling with the technical details, can maybe start with quick introduction. Hi everyone, my name is Alex. I come from Mastercard. You can see my full formal corporate title there, but to simplify things, I run the customer success organization for EMEA. In this presentation, I'll present the point of view of customer success in the cooperation with sales.
Hello, everyone. It's Roberto here. Nice to see some faces that we met before and new ones alike. As Alex said, I'm on the flip side. I'm on the direct sales, so really leading into the work that most of us do here. Part of the Rossum account executive team for the EMEA section, and yeah, looking forward to share some best practices with you guys.
What we wanted to present as, and you'll see, a quick journey. We wanted to just go through the standard customer journey, but then focus on what are the key points of cooperation between the two organizations. This came up as an interesting topic in networking last time, so we kind of discussed on that and wanted to give you some overview advice and best practices that we've encountered. So maybe we can start from the hunter and sales side, presented on top.
So as most of us are aware, obviously in direct sales, when we talk about the negotiation and sale motion, we're kind of on the forefront. But I think already early on here, it's key to kind of align with CS. Specifically, it could be commercial terms, how you're running your commercial model, but more importantly, what are the success KPIs that are being used to validate a purchase or an implementation? And really what we do there is to align on the business outcomes that then the CS will take forward during the project.
Yeah, good point. And not just that, I would kind of expand it further, and I'll repeat this point through, I think, every step of the journey is keep in touch between each other. Find the time. If it's above your pay grade, tell your manager to make this alignment, because it's really important. So for example, even in this, like the sales phase, it's not the primary focus of customer success, but it's extremely important that the two organizations are aligned. Why? Customer success obviously can then expect what will the pipeline look like, who will there be onboarding, and I think the biggest kind of words of wisdom that customer success can share back is making sure that we are hitting, the correct customer. So sharing input of what worked, what didn't, and which customers should we target and sell towards ideally.
I think that kind of segues great, obviously, into the implementation and onboarding. So I think at this stage, it's vital to set up a clear cadence of communication, as Alex indicated, both internally and externally. So as a direct sales, we obviously have that first touch point with decision makers, economic buyers, you name it. Obviously, granting that access and smooth handover, I think, is very important. Make sure that obviously then the onboarding is followed through, not just from a purchasing perspective, but also a change management perspective.
Yeah, and from cooperation side, this is probably one of the trickiest ones, the dreaded handover sometimes, where obviously, so from customer success side, we can be a bit demanding. We can, on one hand, we want smooth handover to us, and we want the sales team to still be present and not disappear suddenly. At the flip side, also, we kind of want them also to start moving away so we can take over the relationship there. And the quality of cooperation between two teams really shows in this phase, because smooth transition is hard always. And I'm pretty sure no matter what your product is, moving from the sales process towards the customer starting to use, or especially if it's a complex product that needs integration steps or implementation, it's very visible how the cooperation between the two teams is exactly in this step. So here, once again, keep in touch, make sure that both teams are on the same page and are focused on the customer and both their success, but also their future opportunities.
Precisely. And then talking about the adoption, I think this is really where that kind of motion of sales, direct sales, get out is really materialized. I think it's obviously important to be part of that adoption process. as a direct sales team, we are the ones who are driving that initial enthusiasm of, we're going down this journey together. So obviously being part of that while still giving the authority to the CS team, I think is a crucial step. And really that's what's going to get you that long-term engagement, right? You're the first face to see, but you understand it's a progression. It's not just a one-off kind of engagement.
Yeah, and kind of as the sales phase is obviously kind of biased towards sales, this phase is the kind of business as usual for the customer success team. This is where we focus most of our time. And in this phase, interestingly enough, it's first, I think it's where the collaboration breaks apart most usually. This is what I've seen across many different organizations. Why? Because it's in a way the nature of the jobs. Sales starts focusing there already in the new opportunity. Customer success is busy with fighting fires sometimes, or in an ideal scenario they are bringing the full business value to the customer, but they are really focused on that, which means that it's very easy to get into the pattern of we don't have time now to align, maybe we'll talk next week, or maybe let's leave it for next month. Eventually what happens is the two teams start really drifting apart, and I think it's a common scenario that most likely many of you have seen. And I'm not saying that we need to be attached to the hip. We do have different slightly goals and different KPIs, but at the same time, both teams are focusing on the success of our customers, and both teams benefit towards that. So for me, in this stage, this is where kind of the engine is. This is where you set up the success for both, kind of going back to sales and also making sure that you expand, because this is where you need to really focus on making sure that both teams have some regular touch base, regular meetings, and that can be up to you. It can be once a month, it can be occasionally, and it's up to leadership there as well. But it's key to set it up here and not let it drift, as otherwise both the phases that come after, but also the previous phases, will start struggling. You'll lose touch, and teams will start, in my experience, resenting even each other, not collaborating. While we collaborate, this is where not just like each team shines, but the customer sees us as one face of the product of the company, and we look then really as advisors, not as someone pitching their wares.
Absolutely, and I think going into retention, this is probably the most important factor, right? Not appearing as a divided, like two-entity kind of approach, but again, let's use those success KPIs, what's been achieved, to find that common ground and repeatable approach. Now, depending on your specific GTM structure, you may or may not be involved in renewals and expansions as a direct salesperson. But again, I go back to that point of the connection with the initial decision makers, right? You're the ones who've convinced them. So by leveraging that social proof of the completed project and experience of the CS, but at the end of the day, is your personal specialist. That's really how we can either renew, expand, or whatever that might be. So I think, yeah, it's exactly that kind of point where you really have to come together.
Yes, I would say from this journey, this is probably, besides finding the customer, this is one of the key points that shows whether the collaboration works or not. I've seen many variants in the organization of who is responsible exactly for renewals, who is responsible. I mean, CS is responsible for retention usually, but it's a blurred line very often, which means that, again, we are telling now a bit of an ideal scenario. There is no single way to do this collaboration. You need to really adapt it to your organization, to your structure, to your GTM strategy at the end of the day. But what's important here that first, from retention side, obviously customer success is focused on that. It's one of our main metrics. If customers churn, we suck at our job in a way. While on the other hand, having sales reappear or being present there in the background, my experience is that it brings a lot of confidence with the customers, because they see again a familiar face from before. So they feel, this guy is not just like sell and disappear. And again, they see, the two teams as one entity, which in my experience is something that customers appreciate.
I think going forward to that point, obviously what this places you is more of a role of an explorer once again, rather than someone who's just renewing. So in direct sales, if we've built a specific use case or a specific department and we look to expand, you're coming in again as that specialist that's responsible for that first exploration. It's validated once again. So that's really what we want to go for, right? Replicating once more the success of the past. Really.
Yeah, and on the expansion side, it's obviously it's very close to retention renewal. It's usually a result in many situations. Here, I want to highlight the collaboration is important for scalability from my perspective, because can a CSM deal upselling and expansion? Sure, and many of us did it in our various roles. But collaborating there allows for bigger scaling in a way that sales can come in, take part of the burden, especially if it's a bigger upsell. On the flip side, customer success can focus more on what's the outcome for the customer, focus on other topics, focusing on retention and renewal. And that's where, again, cooperation is key also in this step. This one, I would say from advice, it's even less clear where you want to draw the line, and it's definitely up to the organization, the leadership. But some of the common advice is that from what we've seen, it definitely helps that both sides are aware at the very least, or involved to a certain degree. And then, the final phase.
So what does this all lead to? In an ideal world, of course, advocacy, right? As a direct salesperson, obviously, this is where my eyes shine, right? What we want to build is a replicable model, as mentioned, that leverages champions, right? Rather than a hard outbound motion. And what you'll find with that is that you're having less internal battles with things like procurement, any detractors which may have implemented the previous solution you're trying to displace. All these factors you want to kind of get around by using that kind of ideal cycle and really having a team that is working for the client in a joint manner.
Yeah, no, exactly. I would say this is the like crown moment of the cooperation. Obviously, for customer success, advocacy has passed. You get the high scores on NPS, you get a promotion. It's amazing. The customers are happy. It's definitely the goal. But it's not just about that, because in a way that shows that first, as customer success, as an account manager, you really understood the needs of the customer. You brought them to a level where they are willing to vouch for your product, which is great. That also means probably you have a great product as well, but as a side topic. But jokes aside, having a customer that's at this level, which is beyond them just expanding, it's definitely a dream state for both teams, because it's way easier to sell when the customer is at that stage. And on the customer success side, you're not then maintaining, you elevated the relationship to a level where the discussions you're having are definitely not operational anymore, but extremely strategic at that level. You have a champion for your product, for what you're offering. And it's I would say, getting to this step should be the goal of both teams. And this is kind of why the customer journey, every team, as you see, was maybe more visible on one step, less visible, depending on the context, but both teams should collaborate, because the benefit of getting to this step is a joint effort. And in my experience, if the two teams are disjointed, it's way harder to get to advocacy.
Absolutely. So I think just this was all based on our own experiences, obviously, and some of the things that we often find can hinder this relationship are, leadership challenges, how incentive plans are structured differently. That's usually, I think, a big one. And then obviously how involved people want to be outside of their own direct responsibilities. But, we'd be keen to maybe hear what challenges you guys have faced and how you've resolved that.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Everyone wants to drink. Huh?
So it's a great question. And for example, we don't work together. This was a general thing. But from my end, what I see, besides, usually you will always take a look at some variant of NPS, CSAT. That's always there. It's kind of given. It's a bit cliche even at this point, I would say. But you need to have a variant of that to measure general sentiment. After that, is if you are product focused, in my experience, is engagement, but from the sense of which modules are used specifically, measure exactly the usability. If you deployed something new, did this generate kind of excitement? So trying to have as much data from I'm managing like a technological product. So trying to get as much metrics and data from the product itself is a key thing, and then building whatever works for you in a generic way. Specifically for me, for example, is which modules are used, and then going deeper, which parts of the business are using which specific modules. Can we change that? Can we increase usability and so on? This allows me to advise sales team in sense of new opportunities, but I spend also lots of time, for example, on discussing with the product team, as I have definitely eyes directly on the how the customer is using the platform, what are their actual struggles. So I feel alignment with product in this sense, so like what we mentioned other departments, it's also key in building good KPIs.
I think the only thing I would add there really is it's about the shared business outputs, right? That's the only thing that will then eventually connect you. You might have some KPIs that are very different in a pre-sales motion compared to post-sales motion. I think figuring out what is the common ground or what is being achieved is usually the best way to align.
Yeah. And also not to be completely super idealistic as we were. I mean, at the end also for me, annual recurring revenue is definitely a metric that I need to, be responsible for in the region, and that is a financial responsibility, and then obviously sales has their targets, which are also growing. So just to be also kind of realistic, there are always the financial goals, financial incentives for making sure that the customers are successful. We are not from Reich.
Neither of us.
We are external actually. But both of us, so we are the only presentation that's external. But we can give an example on. So from my end, that's interesting question, and I think it depends on the size of the organization as one thing. So coming from extremely large corporation, there is too much even segmentation of teams in many cases, where if I need to do consulting for the customer, there's a whole organization that does that, which I bring in. But going on the hybrid model, we see it's extremely efficient and successful to have a single expert, something like like Reich presented, or like a technical account manager type of role. I think absolutely both work. I've seen both work successfully. Corporations tend to lean on the traditional, which is becoming even a bit old school model of hunters farmers, because of organizational challenges, I would say, and that there is much more bureaucracy, red tape involved in that. While I do think that there is more focus on optimizing this in startup world and in smaller companies, smaller corporations.
Yeah, definitely. I'm on the flip side of that, and obviously we have a limited amount of resources, so acting jointly, and obviously depending on the product you sell, how scalable that is internally, whether you require heavy onboarding for new users or not, that's all going to impact it, obviously. But I really think together that's what we really want to go for, a hybrid model in an SMB kind of environment.
Absolutely. So I've seen everything from CSMs owning basically all the revenue in the region to more often sales being, you know, the main decision makers in the region or globally. There is no one size fits all. I put it as a topic because this is something I'm actively, you know, from leadership perspective, focusing on. It's super challenging to find something that makes everyone happy. As a general rule of thumb, what I've seen that definitely works in this split, let's not focus CSMs to sell too much, because I feel that team should be seen definitely as an advisor, not as someone trying to pitch a sale. Same thing, let's not, you know, let's let hunters hunt is also a good experience in my case. Though, with, you know, that's my opinion, I might get disagreement now, though I also want that sales has at least part of their incentive plans connected to retention, because I've seen situations where sales had nothing like that, where they would just sell, disappear, no alignment, no checking, you know, is this feasible, is this scalable, and so on. So to recap, like from my side, it's really focus CSM, you know, KPIs on retention. I've even seen it as extreme. Don't have CSMs on a quota. Let them focus on customers as their job. It's you know, also risky, but because extra motivation is always nice. But and then have sales be motivated to collaborate is my take on this.
Again, yeah, differing experience on the startup side, but I think when you are trying to scale, it's important to play your strengths, right? And so defining that also across KPIs is very important. So if, as Alex said, if you have a team of hunters, then I think net new ARR should definitely be a, you know, kind of central metric, but it should be focused on a team or coupled to a team of CS that is also focused on that net new ARR creation. It takes, you know, different focuses on specific accounts. So I believe, yeah, maybe a little bit different to Alex. I think focus on what you're good until you can.
But it's a slippery slope if you like don't set it up correctly. So I've seen also like nightmare scenarios where focus was, for example, change completely on recurring revenue, and then the year after people were wondering, why didn't we sell consulting services? Because no one was incentivized, for example, to do that. So this is a leadership challenge, and it's very tricky one to get right in my experience. And if someone has also more experience on this, I would definitely like to hear different opinions. Thanks, everyone.